Another method of solving a quadratic is to solve by completing the square. So, you're trying to make this into a perfect square binomial. So a perfect square binomial looks like this. X plus a squared. So that distributes into x squared plus 2a plus a squared. So we want to get this, we want to take these quadratics and make them into, want to factor them like this in order for us to take the square root of both sides. Because remember, the square root method is an easier method. So what I'm going to look at right here is I'm going to look at what I have and see, well, right now, this right here, I can factor that because this is a perfect square trinomial. This factors into x minus 7 squared. Because it's x minus 7 times x minus 7, and I can write it as x minus 7 squared. So x minus 7 squared equals 81. And now I turned it into this square root way of solving. So I can take the square root of both sides. So this is when you have to be careful and set up two different problems, because you have x minus 7 could be positive the square root of 81, which is 9, and x minus 7 could be negative 9. So now I'm going to solve. So x is 16 and x is negative 2. My answers. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look for something that factors. Well, I see this side factors too. So I have x minus 1 squared. Actually, no, that one doesn't. Okay, it doesn't factor. So if it doesn't, you guys, if this doesn't factor right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my a and b, and I'm going to get c to the other side. So I'm going to add 1 to each side. So now we're going to isolate x squared minus 2x equal 1. And we're going to see how we can make x squared minus 2x into something like x plus a squared, a perfect square trinomial. So what you do is you're going to take, this is your b term, you're going to take half of b and you're going to square it and add it to each side. That's going to create a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to have x squared minus 2x, but half of negative 2 is negative 1, and negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, so I'm going to add 1 to each side of my equation to keep it balanced. Now what you have is this right here. We created something that we could factor out. X squared minus 2x plus 1 factors into x minus 1 squared. So x minus 1 squared equals 2. So now you have this square root problem like we had over here. And I'm going to take the square root of both sides and break it off. So x minus 1 could be positive root 2, x minus 1 could be negative root 2. Make sure the negative is on the outside. So now I'm going to add 1. So the answer is going to be 1 plus or minus root 2. I have two answers. I just put my answers together, because it's going to be 1 plus root 2 and 1 minus root 2. So I wrote it as 1 plus or minus root 2. So what we're going to do is I have an x squared plus 6x. So I want to make a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to take half of my b and square it and add it to each side. So half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to write x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals, don't forget to add it to the other side, plus 9. So this part is a perfect square trinomial, and it factors into x plus 3 squared. And this is going to be negative 34 plus 9 is negative 25. So now I'm going to take the square root of each side. Now we've learned about complex numbers. This is going to be an imaginary number because I have the square root of a negative 25. I can do that because we know that the square root of negative 25 is 5i. So I'm going to break it up into two parts. I'm going to have x plus 3 equals positive 5i, and x plus 3 equals negative 5i. So, because remember, this is the square root of negative 25 is 5i, but then you have to do plus or minus. So my answer is going to be 3, or negative 3, because I have to subtract 3 from each side, plus or minus 5i. Okay, so far we've been doing quadratics that have x squareds. We haven't had to do anything that had an a out front, like an a that's not 1. So when you complete the square, what you have to do is you need to make sure that the coefficient, the number in front of x squared, the a, is 1. So in order to make this 1, I'm going to divide everything through by 2. So now I have x squared plus 1/2 x equals 3. So I'm gonna complete the square. So if I look at my b, so I take half of a half and I square it. So half of a half is a fourth. A fourth squared is 1/16. So it's x squared plus 1/2 x plus 1/16 equals 3. Don't forget to add 1/16 over here. So now this factors out into, now the shortcut to factor out, you guys, I don't know if you've noticed this pattern, but to factor it, all you do is take half of the b term. Take half of the b term. Take half of the b term. So don't be intimidated by this. To factor it, you're just going to take half of a half, which is a fourth. And 3 plus 1/16. I'm going to get a common denominator of 16. So 3 times 16 is 48. So this is 49/16. So now I'm going to take the square root of this side. So I'm going to break it up into two parts. So it's x plus 1/4 equals positive root 49 over 16. So, okay, so root 49/16 is the same thing as the square root of 49 over the square root of 16. So that's positive 7/4 and x plus 1/4 equals negative 7/4. So I'm going to solve. So x equals negative, 7/4 minus 1/4 is 6/4, so that's 3/2. And then minus 1/4 is negative 8/4, which is negative 2. Reduce them. Okay, then you can also use completing the square to write in vertex form. So we wrote in vertex form by finding the vertex, but you might actually find completing the square to be faster for this one. So to complete the square, you're trying to write it like this: y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. You're trying to write the vertex form like that. So you're going to take your a and your b, and you're still going to complete the square by taking half of b and squaring it. So half of negative 10 squared is negative 5 squared, which is 25, and you got to add it to each side. I'm going to slip it in right after the negative 10x. So you still kept the equation balanced because you added 25 on each side. So now this factors out into x minus 5 squared. So you have y plus 25 equals x minus 5 squared minus 2. And then at the end, you're going to get y by itself. See? So this has a vertex at 5, negative 27. just another way to write in vertex form. So over here, I look at my a and b, so I'm going to take half of 5 and square it. So it's 5 divided by 2 squared. So it's going to be 25 fourths. So I'm going to add 25 fourths to each side. So it's going to be y plus 25 fourths equals, and now I'm going to write it as x squared plus 5x plus 25 fourths. You still got that plus 3. So this part factors into, take half of the b term. So half of 5 is 5 over 2. Then I still have that plus 3. And I have y plus 25 fourths. So you want to get y by itself, so you subtract 25 fourths. Oops, that's a 5. So then down here you have y equals x plus 5 halves squared and 3 minus 25 fourths. So let's get a common denominator, and instead of writing 3, I'm going to write 12 fourths. So 12 fourths minus 24 fourths is negative 13 fourths. So my vertex would be at negative 5 halves, negative 13 fourths.